about divine command theory, the belief that what's moral and what's immoral is commanded by the divine. People have been going to the gods to figure out how to behave since the start of recorded history, and for good reason. Just one benefit of the divine command theory is its simplicity. How do I know what to do? Easy. Go ask God. Check the rulebook. The question Socrates asks can be framed something like this. Are right actions right because God commands them, or are right actions commanded by God because they are right? To the thought bubble. Here's the setup. You're going about your day minding your own business when suddenly God shows up. Or at least he claims to be God. And he sure seems like God to you. He has nice fresh breath and excellent posture, and his iPhone is a version that's not even out yet. Like, this guy is God. And he tells you that he's changed his mind about morality. The 10 Commandments are out, he says, or rather, they've been reversed. You are now commanded to kill, steal, commit adultery, and so forth. God says he understands that this is confusing, but he assures you that he knows best. And this has been part of his plan all along. He was just waiting for humanity to be ready for it. So he instructs you to go forth and begin carrying out his commands. To do otherwise would be a sin. So how do you process this information? Do you assume that there must be something wrong with your brain, or that something's gone wrong with God, or do you obey? If God determines the rightness and wrongness of everything just by saying so, then the entire concept of goodness and value becomes vacuous. Because it means that saying God commands what is good is really just saying God commands what he commands. The idea of what's good doesn't really mean anything anymore. So what about the second horn of the dilemma? Does it make sense to say that God commands things because they're good? Maybe this doesn't seem like a problem, but it means that God isn't omnipotent, because there's at least one thing, value, that doesn't stem from God. Instead, someone or something else has created it, and God just uses it. If there's some standard of goodness that God has to stick to when making commandments, then that means there must be things that God can't command. And if the ethical rules of the universe come from some source other than God, then why can't we just go straight to that source too and figure out morality for ourselves in the same way God did? Once you go down this road, you soon find that God and his religious texts must be superfluous, little more than moral cliffs notes, a shortcut to understanding the original source of knowledge.
It's the same thing when we talk about the Euthyphro dilemma when we're talking about morality. Is something moral because God says so, or does God say so because it's moral?
Right.
If it's the latter, what do we need God for? We don't need an intermediary to tell us what's right and wrong.
But actually, I mean,
my question is for Professor Dawkins. Considering that atheism cannot possibly have any sense of absolute morality, would it not then be an irrational leap of faith, which atheists themselves so harshly condemn, for an atheist to decide between right and wrong?
Absolute morality, the absolute morality that a religious person might profess would include what? Stoning people for adultery, death for apostasy, punishment for breaking the Sabbath. These are all things which are religiously based absolute moralities. I don't think I want an absolute morality. I think I want a morality that is thought out, reasoned, argued, discussed, and based upon, I could almost say, intelligent design. Can we not design our society which has the sort of morality, the sort of society that we want to live in? If you actually look at the moralities that are accepted among modern people, among 21st century people, we don't believe in slavery anymore. We believe in equality of women. We believe in being gentle. We believe in being kind to animals. These are all things which are entirely recent. They have very little basis in biblical or Quranic scripture. They are things that have developed over historical time through a consensus of reasoning, sober discussion, argument, legal theory, political and moral philosophy. These do not come from religion. To the extent that you can find the good bits in religious scriptures, you have to cherry pick. You search your way through the Bible or the Quran, and you find the occasional verse that is an acceptable profession of morality. And you say, look at that, that's religion. And you leave out all the horrible bits. And you say, oh, we don't believe that anymore. We've grown out of that. Well, of course we've grown out of it. We've grown out of it because of secular moral philosophy and rational discussion.
My view is that morality, our human morality, is older than religion. So instead of
saying morality comes from God or religion gave us morality. For me, that's a big no-no. Our current religions are just 2,000 or 3,000 years old, which is very young, and our species is much older. And I cannot imagine that, for example, 100,000 years or 200,000 years, our ancestors did not have some type of morality. Of course, they had rules about how you should behave, what is fair, what is unfair, caring for others. All of these tendencies were in place already, so they had a moral system. And then at some point we developed these present-day religions, which I think were sort of tacked onto the morality that we had. And maybe they served to codify them, or to enforce them, or to steer morality in a particular direction that we prefer. And so religion comes in for me secondarily.
Wrong. Where do we get the notion of morality? From physics or from God?
I cannot believe you're suggesting that if you didn't believe in God, you would think it was okay to go out and murder people. Do you seriously think that we need religion in order to agree that murder is a bad thing? Do you seriously think that before, I don't know, Moses came down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments and said, "Thou shalt not kill," the people said, "Oh, right, thou shalt not kill. Oh, how surprising. We didn't know that before. Right, in future we won't kill." Of course that's not how it happened. We have perfectly good reasons for saying we don't like to live in the sort of society where people kill each other at will, and if they do it, we lock them up, and we think in any case that it's a bad thing. I cannot believe that any person in good conscience would ever say the only reason that I'm good, the only reason I'm a good person is my religion. If you believe that, you're actually admitting that if you thought God wasn't watching you, say, you'd go out and kill somebody. I mean, I don't want to know that kind of person. I want to know the kind of person who is good for the sake of being good.
If you ask children sitting in a classroom, is it okay to drink a soda in class if the teacher gives you permission? Most of them will say yes. If you ask them, is it okay to punch your neighbor in the face if the teacher gives you permission? They immediately recognize the distinction between a moral infraction and a mere conventional rule. And this is very young children. But children at risk for psychopathy don't. Children at risk for psychopathy think that rules are just given by an authority. So if the teacher tells you can punch a child in the face, you can punch a child in the face. This is, again, I'm not accusing religious people in general of being psychopaths, but there's a psychopathic core to this moral worldview. This divine command theory that Dr. Craig is advocating suggests that if God only tells you to sacrifice your firstborn son, it is good to do it. That's where goodness comes from. And so you've got people waking up in trailer parks all over America suffering some form of mental illness that's destabilized them and made them vulnerable to this way of thinking. And there are people who kill their children thinking they're Abraham who just didn't get interrupted by an angel. And this is the kind of morality that you get out of a divine command theory that, again, offers no retort to the jihadist other than, sorry, Buster, you happen to have the wrong God.